Hi, and welcome to All Things Cozy with Matt.
And Gillian.
We are a bi weekly podcast about everything that is warm, soft, and comforting. This week, we're skipping holiday stress by sinking into the couch with our childhood TV movie favorites and pairing them not with a fancy feast most are digging into this time of year, but instead cozying up to a frozen TV dinner. Before we start the microwave and press play on our remote controls, let's check in with what's cozy in the news. Gillian, what is on your news desk this week?
Well, Matt, Rudolph's red nose will be shining bright at NBC this year with the return of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer to the network, marking an end to CBS's 50-year monopoly. The switch arrives with the classic Claymation's 60th anniversary, and it will air on the exact same date it did all those years ago, December 6th. Adding to the Christmas magic is the TV movie's extended runtime at 75 minutes. But sadly, the Abominable Snowman is still holding the streaming rights hostage. Though there is some good news, there will be a second airing on December 11th, and it will have a spot in Freeform's 25 Days of Christmas lineup with showings starting December 7th. I was reading the comments on social media, and a lot of people thought that Rudolph had been off the air for 50 years and it was finally coming back, and someone said, "This is what we need more than ever."
Rudolph will fix everything.
Yeah, I thought that was really funny. But no, it's just a little bit of a network wars, and maybe I'm just a nerd and I'm really interested in that kind of thing. Like, where the backroom discussions and how to nab Rudolph from CBS and what went into that. I also got a kick out of Carson Daly being the one to announce the news.
What an honor. I also love that they're doing it on the day the original aired. I love
Mhm.
that little nod to the original impact that it had.
Yeah, I think it's sweet. I like a full circle moment. Rudolph's coming home. He was a war hostage, and we're finally getting him back. Good job, boys. What's on your news desk?
Speaking of more fictional characters getting their day, my news story is that Paddington got a passport. Paddington Bear has officially been granted a British passport. In a delightful nod to his long standing connection with the UK, the Home Office issued a unique passport for the famous bear at the request of filmmakers preparing for the film Paddington in Peru. And they not only delivered a replica, which is what they expected to get, but an official passport. Paddington officially has a real passport, even though he's not a real thing. The film, by the way, Paddington in Peru, which I keep forgetting is coming out. I'm so excited about a new Paddington film. It's out in the UK now, and it's coming to the States in January.
Ooh.
I believe that makes it not qualify for a Cozy Award this year, but it'll be a contender in
Mhm.
2025. That's where my brain goes initially. I'm sure everyone else was thinking the same
Yes,
thing.
of course. We're gonna put
Will
in our votes.
Paddington in Peru qualify for a Cozy Award? Because it would dominate, probably.
I see a cozy date in our future.
Yes,
Gotta go to some
exactly.
movies. But yeah, I think the marketing team does so well with Paddington. It's the details that are so cute.
One more detail, not only was the Home Office accommodating, they also have a sense of humor. Under Paddington's passport's official observations, they've listed him as Bear.
That's sweet.
And accurate.
Yeah, very accurate.
Very jealous of all of the Brits right now who get to enjoy watching the Paddington in Peru movie and also the new season of All Creatures Great and Small, which all of us in the United States have to wait until January for both of those things. Count your blessings.
I don't think they're waiting on anything from us.
Nope.
Sad. Ugh, thanks to UK.
Well, no one's waiting on anything related to what we're talking about today because we dove into pure nostalgia. Julian and I picked two of our favorite TV films, and we just really wanted to dive into our cozy comfort watches. And also, when we think about food, because normally this episode, since it's landing so close to Thanksgiving, we want to talk about food, but we wanted to keep it simple and easy this year. So we opted for frozen meals. And that kind of also matches some of that 90s vibe of convenience and microwavables. Because, like I said, this Thanksgiving, we're going lazy over lavish. And what better way to achieve that than by turning back the clock to the 90s when made for TV movies were king? 1996 saw a whopping 264 TV movies, marking the height of the genre's popularity. Sadly, streamers, stigma against the genre, and prestige television toppled the TV movie from its throne. We were lucky enough to have grown up during this time and remember their calming predictability and the care that went into making them. So let's get into it and revisit some of our childhood favorites, complete with some comforting TV dinners. Jillian, I'm going to kick it off.
And I think that's appropriate because this was a mammoth of a TV movie.
It was, and it was so formative for me. I think it's single-handedly responsible for my obsession with magic, wizards, and witches. My pick for TV movie of my life is 1998's Merlin. It's an all-time favorite. I watched them live when it aired, and I also owned the VHS. And it wasn't just a hit for little me, as it was nominated for almost every category miniseries we're eligible for at the Emmys and Golden Globes that year, winning Emmy Awards for special effects, costume design, art direction, and makeup. What we're going to do here, listeners, is we're going to talk about our TV movie that we picked. We each watched the other's favorite or one that was comforting to us as a kid. And then what frozen meal we paired with our viewing experience. Because you're going to be watching TV while you're eating your TV dinner.
Like a fine wine.
So, since Merlin is in two parts, I double dipped. I picked two frozen dinners to go along with each part. So, let's talk about part one, the first in the television event Merlin. I mean, if you think about this, from Muppet Babies to young Indiana Jones, folks in the 90s were hungry for the untold stories of classic characters in their youth. Why can't Merlin get in on the action? He must not always have had a long gray beard, after all. Merlin is presented, as I said, in two parts, so let's start with the first, naturally, which premiered on Sunday, April 26th, 1998. Merlin is played by Sam Neill, freshly escaped from Jurassic Park just a few years prior, and we meet him as an old man Merlin. He has makeup on, aged, as he shows us a conversation between Queen Mab and the Lady of the Lake, both played by Miranda Richardson, the lady with a sigh and Mab with a screech. Two magical beings on the brink of extinction, as people have stopped believing in them and the old ways, as they convert to that newfangled Christianity. The Lady of the Lake accepts this, Queen Mab does not. And so she creates Merlin, made to lead the people of Britain back to a belief in the old ways, thus preserving Mab and her power. Merlin is born and raised by a human named Ambrosia, learns the ways of wizardry from Mab's gnome servant Frick, a wonderful turn by Martin Short, who I believe was in every TV movie of this era, but turns against Mab after he learns not only did she let his birth mother die, but kills Ambrosia as well. They battle by proxy via the war over sovereignty of Britain, waged by King Vortigern, played by Rutger Hauer, and Uther Pendragon, Mark Jacks, in which Merlin gifts the mythical sword Excalibur to Uther, only to realize there really are no good kings. Part one ends with the birth of the once and future king, Arthur. So to pair with this first parter, Jillian, I selected as my meal. And remember, listeners, I am vegetarian. Okay. So I was looking at the veggie options here, and there are a lot of fake meat options. So I picked the Garden. Is it Gardein? I
I
think it's
say
Gardein.
Gardein.
Yeah, Gardein. It's Gardein. Gardein Garden. Ultimate frozen bowl, plant based, Beth and broccoli. It's
Oh
like beef and
god.
broccoli, but like it's BE''F. So I'm gonna say Beth.
The way
And
to
so
sorry, I gotta say, if you want to convert people to vegetarians, that's not the way.
listen, Julian, we had to begin our hero's journey with a hearty mix of rice, broccoli, and Beth. Pretend you're King Vortigern and feast on the plant-based flesh of your enemies. This was $5.99. I think it was about 3 minutes, 4 minutes in the microwave, and it was surprisingly convincing beef, reminding me of the chop suey my grandma used to make. It is, however, have a very small portion size that will leave you wanting more, just like Merlin Part 1.
The dark side of these frozen meals, it's never enough. At least these veggie ones.
So, what did you think, Julian, about Merlin Part 1? What were your thoughts initially as you were watching this part of the epic two-part series?
I was absolutely mesmerized. I don't remember watching this. Maybe I did and just forgot about it, but it completely encapsulates you. You're in this magical world. And not only is the scenery so enchanting, but so is the makeup and the costumes. And I'm not surprised that it won all those awards. Queen Mab, that is a Halloween costume in waiting. The eye makeup, the hair, oh, she just was a presence, and I loved her raspy, lizardy, villain-like voice. One might say that she's the early pioneer of ASMR. I listened to her all day, and so hats off to Miranda Richardson for keeping up that raspy voice all throughout filming. That deserves an award in of itself. I also want the shawl or cozy sweater that young Merlin was wearing when he first sets off to meet Queen Mab because he's leaving Ambrosia. He has to be called back to Queen Mab. And he's in this fall colored, beautiful shawl. It rivals Jessica Simpson's iconic shawl in Newlyweds. I want it.
Watching this made me realize how much Sam Neill looks like an elf. He just has that little mischievous smirk always on his
Mhm,
lips. And he really does seem like he'd be born supernaturally in a forest, which he is in
mhm,
this. And I really love the special effects in especially the first part. We get some really wonderful stop motion animation with the fairies who build his cradle. I thought that was beautiful.
mhm.
All the twigs that assemble to make the cradle for Merlin. It's no wonder, yeah, this won so many awards for special effects. Even today, most of them hold up, especially the more practical ones. And even the ones that are CGI related, like the dragon, they're done in such a stylish way that it helps you overlook some of the shortcomings of the technology at the time, which they clearly knew. So the way they designed some of the creatures, they accommodated for the lack of polish on the animation by making it seem intentional and that it fits into that universe. And I really love all of the art direction and special effects in this movie, especially. It brings that magic to it while still having a grounded feeling that the people are really there doing those things. Even the way that they show the teleportation magic, I really love. So when Mab will come into a scene with Frick, Martin Short, I mean, they must have filmed them like moving around the set in lots of weird directions because they kind of like flash in like different poses all over this place and then disappear. And it's such a cool effect and it's so simple, but it really sells the magic without necessarily having all of the bells and whistles that we have today.
Yeah, that's very well said, and I also noticed the special effects when Queen Mab is walking over to someone else. She shimmies really quickly. It looks like she's
Yeah.
zooming off, and it has this really cute little sound effect. I wish I could recreate it, but I don't quite remember it, but I thought that was really charming. The Lady of the Lake too, that was really cool. Had that it looked like she was frozen in water. I know that she lives in the lake and she has this watery presence, but every time she was talking to Merlin, it was if she was talking through water, so that special effect was
Mhm.
cool too.
Exactly, and she has a necklace of fish that are swimming
Yes.
around her neck, which early on there are more fish, and as she gets weaker, the fish start disappearing, which I thought was really cool. Mab's power dissipating is communicated through her hairstyle. Her hair turns gray as the series goes on. In this first part, there is a cameo from Sir John Gielgud, who is a famous Shakespearean actor, and he was 94 at the time of filming. The director asked him, "Why are you still working? You're 94. Like, we love to have you here, but what are you doing here?" And he said, "I have a very expensive boyfriend."
Oh,
So, thanks to that, we have
well,
have a Shakespearean legend in this film briefly as a king that doesn't meet a great end.
speaking of iconic actors, the fact that you had such an all-star cast is not what you think of TV movies today. Now they're made fun
Right.
of and it's a Lifetime and all of that. So it was a true treat and the accessibility to have this all-star cast and this incredibly well done movie on your TV and not having to pay the money for movie theater ticket and to go to the theater. That's a luxury we do not have today because we have streaming, but
I mean, more of the stars that I haven't even mentioned that are in this. There's James Earl Jones as the voice of the Rock of Ages that holds Excalibur. You have Rucker Hauer, famous villain from Blade Runner, in the film as well as King Vortigern. And then Isabella Rossellini, who plays the love of Merlin's life. In fact, they have a young version of her. A different actress plays the young version of Nimue, who is Merlin's love interest, and they dubbed Isabella Rossellini's voice over that actor's because they wanted to keep the consistency of the voice. So it's just a completely stacked cast.
yeah, and when you eventually get to part 2, we are just rolling in the stars.
Yes, let's get to it. Let's get to part two. So on the next day, so this was a Sunday when this premiered in 1998. On the following Monday, we had part two. It had us flying through time faster than a griffin as a now young Arthur, tutored by Merlin, claims Excalibur and forms Camelot and the Knights of the Round Table, setting forth himself for the Holy Grail. There's more naughtiness in this installment than a season of Desperate Housewives, from a bit of incest with Morgan Le Fay, performance by Helena Bonham Carter, that strikes the perfect balance of pity and contempt, to a sad affair between Lancelot and Guinevere, played by Game of Thrones' Lena Headey. After much mutual destruction, costing not only the lives of Arthur, Morgan, their son Mordred, and the imprisonment of Merlin's love, Nimue, Merlin finally defeats Mab once and for all, retiring as an old storyteller until an old gnome of a friend lets him know the love of his life, Nimue, has emerged from the prison of Mab's spell.
Ugh, my relief when we had that happy ending. I know you have to have a happy ending in a fairy tale, but I wasn't sure that was going to happen, and I think that just is a testament to the fact of how engrossed I was. I loved Helena and Martin's dynamic because in the movie, they are playing an odd love interest.
It is definitely an odd love interest because the makeup for Frick, who is a gnome played by Martin Short, is quite grotesque, but he is able to shapeshift. So he shapeshifts most of the time when he's with Morgan Le Fay, who is also turned beautiful by magic. And they fall in love in those forms, but their relationship is deeper than their appearance by the end. And it's one of the more tragic love stories in the miniseries.
I thought it was also really interesting how Lena Headey foreshadowing kind of her role in Game of Thrones because in both the movie and in Game of Thrones, she is punished for treason.
Yeah, that's true.
It was kind of funny. I didn't know the story of Guinevere, that's pronouncing her name right, and Lancelot. I guess I wasn't really aware of any of these stories because I only had Sword in the Stone and the zany version cartoon of Merlin. I didn't know any of this background, the Christianity and Camelot and all of that. I guess I wasn't well versed in it.
I'm not so deep in on Arthurian legend, but apparently, based on the minimal amount of research I've done, people say this is relatively accurate to the general beats of the Arthur legend. With obviously lots of concessions for like making Merlin more central than Merlin would otherwise be. Even like the era they set it in, like the costuming of that is pretty supposed to be pretty accurate. But I don't necessarily know that for sure. So don't hold me to that, listeners. But people say
Mhm.
this is relatively accurate and hitting those notes. There was a moment where I was like, yeah, I'm gonna read the Once and Future King. I'm gonna like really get in on my Arthur lore, and I've never done it, but I do know through osmosis, like right through the Sword and the Stone, through Merlin, some of those story beats.
It was really captivating, all those different stories, and I was Googling some of it while I was watching. I was also wondering what your reaction was like as a kid, because there are some really scary and violent moments too, and
Yeah,
also a lot of sexual undertones in the second part
I'm
of
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, no, there are, and to be quite honest, all the sexual stuff went right over my head. I don't think I even paid any attention to it because I think I've rewatched this. When I had it on VHS, I rewatched it. I rewatched it probably a decade ago when it first came to streaming. It wasn't until this rewatch again that I remembered like, "Oh, wow, that happens? That happens?" I really didn't pay much attention to the Guinevere storyline, to be quite honest, when I was a kid. I was really focused on the magic
Right.
and the dragons and the griffins and the fairies and all those little mythical creatures. So there's enough of that for dorky kids to lose sight of all of the
Right.
incest and the cheating and all the other stuff going on, like the court scandals that are in the miniseries. Even Nimue and Merlin's love story. I'm sure, like when I was a kid, I just tuned out. I probably went and played with my Star Wars toys while that was happening, and then came back when like the dragons came back on the screen. So I think that's probably what happened in reality.
I wish I remembered if I watched it when I was a kid or not, because I think I would have had the same reaction. I would have been so obsessed with the fairies, all the shape shifting, I wouldn't pay attention to the sexual undertones. But when Queen Mab was sitting on the lap of one of the kings, the first
Oh
king to
yeah,
die, I was like,
yeah.
oh, lots of things like that. But I also loved, not to do a hard pivot, the final message of the movie, which is that if you don't give anything any mind, it disappears, which is so powerful.
Yeah, ultimately, right, the way to defeat these things that are bothering and nagging were to just finally let them loose and not give them any more of your energy or attention.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really powerful scene when everyone's walking away from Queen Mab as she's shrieking and her backs are turned to her and
Yeah.
Merlin walks away. I loved it. I thought it was great.
I'm glad you enjoyed it because this is, again, one of my all-time favorites, one that I come back to not all the time, but, like, when I come back to it, it is such a balm. It takes me right back into feeling like a kid again, and I
Mm.
get lost in the magic to this day.
Yeah. I could say also one last thing I wanna say about it is that I think messages outside of the parting message, because that was very evident, we don't have kids' movies today that let you do the critical thinking of to determine what the meaning of moments are.
Right.
And I do miss that because it's really beaten over the head in kids' movies today, whether it's friendship or being brave, they really drive it home, but here they just let it wash over you. But maybe it's also geared more toward adults. It's not a kids' movie per se, is it?
No, yeah, no, I think it's family film watching.
Okay,
I
family.
think there's something there for everybody. And of course, I paired a TV dinner with this film. So for part two, what we are dining on, dear listener, is Amy's Veggie Loaf. The legend is complete with this vegan version of the legendary TV dinner classic, meatloaf. TV trays were made to support this kind of convenient comfort food. So this is a meatless alternative to an old-time favorite. Amy's Veggie Loaf comes smothered in gravy with organic mashed potatoes, peas, and corn on the side. And I thought this was the total package. It felt just like mom and dad were still at work and I was on my own for dinner all over again. This is what the prototypical TV dinner is. It's just like a frozen meatloaf, peas and corn and mashed potatoes. And it delivered. I really feel like I traveled back in time eating this meal, even though it was vegan and not a real meatloaf. And they didn't call it something stupid like netloaf or something.
Yeah, Beth. It sounds like a character on a cartoon that doesn't speak, like a little penguin or something, and it goes,
Yeah.
"Beth." I don't know. I think you get bonus points for finding a frozen meal with mashed potatoes, because that's what I was
Yeah.
after, and I could not find that, and I don't wanna harp on it, but meat lovers have such an easier time finding those cozier comfort frozen meals because that's typically a staple with meat and mashed potatoes and gravy come with that. So, points to Amy's.
Amy's Veggie Loaf was $6.99.
Good
A little
deal.
more expensive, a dollar more than the ultimate frozen bowl, the Beth and broccoli, but I think you get a lot more value for that dollar because this felt like a full meal. Just like it felt like watching part 2 of Merlin completed the story. My belly was full and complete.
Yeah, very cozy. I wanna try Amy's.
Well, Jillian, upwards and onwards in our TV movie journey, we're gonna fast forward 1 year to 1999 for your pick.
Yeah, I guess this pick might seem a little bit out of left field, but I watch a lot of TV movies with my mom, and we would cozy up in the den together, and we watch Selena and just a ton of TV movies, and one of the ones that we watched together was Sweetwater, A True Rock Story.
It's truly rockin'.
Truly rockin', I was rockin'. I think I was just about to turn 10 because it was VH1's music's first ever made for TV movie, and it aired on August 15th, 1999, and my birthday's in September, so I think I was just about to turn 10. So, it was like catnip for me, it's a cool rock story. So let's get into the plot, and like I said, it was VH1 to choose this, kind of an weird, curious choice because probably many of you haven't heard of the Los Angeles-based band who made history as the first rock group to perform at Woodstock before fading into obscurity. The rise and fall is exactly what VH1 sets out to explore, starting out decades after that iconic performance in 1969. And fun fact, Woodstock happened on August 15th, so it was no coincidence. That's when they aired
Mm.
this movie. Leading the investigation into Sweetwater's disappearance is Cami Carlson, a reporter played by Kelly Williams. Cami is back at work after a leave of absence for addiction and is given what she believes is a dud assignment, finding out what happened to Sweetwater. Cami quickly realizes there's more to the story and is captivated by the true talent of Sweetwater's lead singer, Nancy Nevins, who is portrayed by Amy Jo Johnson, aka the Pink Power Ranger. But Cami has trouble locating Nancy and is perplexed by surviving band members' negative reactions to her poking around. From there, we jump back and forth in time from the 90s to late 60s, giving viewers a front row seat to the band's origins and its tragedies. We learn Nancy got into a car accident caused by a drunk driver just months after Woodstock, unraveling in an instant all the obstacles she overcame to find stardom. During a surgery to save her life, Nancy's right vocal cord was severely damaged, and without her singing voice, Sweetwater fails to maintain its momentum. Back in the present day, Cami finally tracks down Nancy, who is now a college professor and determined to leave the past in the past. But this is a movie about second chances, and it becomes clear there's another act in both Cami and Nancy's futures. So it's a little dramatic for a TV movie that a 10-year-old is watching. And also wonder maybe I love this movie because I had a crush on Amy Jo Johnson. Like
That was
looking
what I
back
was
at
wondering. I was
this.
like, I think I know why Jillian loves this movie.
I think that's probably why looking back into it, I was so obsessed. I got a guitar for my birthday that year.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
It's clear how formative these are on us because I still continue my love for magic because of Merlin, and you still play the guitar today because of Sweetwater.
Oh, yeah. Strumming on my guitar. It's one of those wooden guitars, like a not a rock and roll electric.
An acoustic guitar, yeah.
Yes, acoustic guitar. Clearly, I'm such a musician. But yeah, so I thought it was really interesting looking into the backstory of Sweetwater. obviously did not attend Woodstock. I asked remember asking my mom if she knew about them, but I think that's a little past her time. Nancy really did become a professor. She was at Glendale Community College, and she was in a car crash with a drunk driver. The film kind of insinuates that maybe she or her friend were at cause for that, but it really just was a drunk driver on the Glendale Freeway. I love this movie just simply because a female lead is in the place of the band, and that you don't really see that, or at least in the '90s, it's just all pop stars, so I didn't really have a background for, "Oh, this is a cool, different kind of eclectic band and a woman's leading it." I thought that was really neat. The band was actually one of the most diverse bands at that time, and they had a lot of success. They were playing with The Doors, Jefferson Airplane. They were really on the rise. But after this car crash, obviously, they really just couldn't get back together, and there are theories that VH1 chose this story because they're trying to relaunch them, and they did have a reunion, I think in the '90s again, but it just didn't go anywhere, and they tried to put out a few albums and it just all fell flat. So who knows, maybe even without the car crash, they wouldn't have been a major success. But I think for me, it really activated my justice chip at the time. Like, this isn't fair. She worked so hard and the guys are leaving for her behind. And I wanted to see her have that happy ending. And we do have that at the end. But in real life, she doesn't really ascend back to that place.
Yeah, what I thought was so cozy about this was the happy ending. The band reunites for that encore performance. I guess they did actually perform at Woodstock 1994, so they did have a bit of that resurgence, or at least
Mhm.
that moment back together again. Although reading the futures of all of the band members, like pretty much shortly thereafter, everyone died
Yeah.
except for Nancy. Very tragic and all. In the film version of this, I do love that they do get to have that kind of healing moment after all of the trauma that they went through together as a band.
Yeah, and that was is really nice to see that final reunion with not like you said, all the members died, so it was one of the main members, and they have that coming together again, which was really nice to see. I don't know if anyone is familiar with this movie. I'd be really curious to see what people say. I was reading the comments on YouTube because unfortunately this is only on YouTube, but it's very poor quality, and a lot of people are saying, "I love this movie. It's so great to see this movie again." I was thinking, is it just me and my mom that watched this? I don't recall it being a big smash, especially not like Merlin, no awards were given out.
This is only available to watch currently on YouTube. Somebody ripped a VHS copy and uploaded it to YouTube in digital form, and so it has all the fuzz and distortion of a terrible recording from VH1. You can tell it wasn't even the VHS version that they did later sell. Like, you could buy it in stores and just get a complete movie, because there are parts where it cuts to commercial and then they cut the person recording it and starts up again when the commercials are over. So this is an actual recording of when it was airing live. And really, this video is one step up from the video from The Ring. But I thought it really added to the retro flavor. I felt like I was kind of watching it back in the late 90s a little bit, like finding a bootleg version of it. And on the Sweetwater website of the band, so the band has a website and they have a page dedicated to this film. There's a section where it says, like, you can buy this movie on Amazon. They're still selling the VHS
Oh,
version
oh
on
boy.
Amazon.
That's gonna help us out.
I'm guessing resellers at this point. I'm sure no original copies are being sold. I'm surprised more of the folks involved in this movie, like Amy Jo Johnson, or even Michelle Phillips from the Mamas and the Papas, plays the
Oh,
older
right, sorry, I should
Nancy.
mention that, yeah.
I'm surprised none of them have fought for the preservation of this piece. I thought this movie was so comforting to watch in that way that genre movies can be. It hit every familiar note of a rock biopic, and the performances were strong, and I have the music stuck in my head. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, Jillian, now that I've seen.
Motherless child. I was actually thinking about you while I was watching it because I was like, "Oh, I hope Matt's not getting irritated by hearing "Motherless Child" over and over again," because I'm like, "Is this the only song that they have?" I was starting to wonder. I was really jamming out when I was 10, but now I'm like, "Okay, get a new song." We've heard "Motherless Child" over and over again. But Amy Jo Johnson, those are her true vocals, and she sings a lot in Felicity, which she was a big star of back then as well. Singing's in her blood, she did a good job of it. Someone cruelly commented that she did better than the lead singer. It's like, wow, these people are brutal in the YouTube
Yeah.
comments, but I think it'd be really cool to have it be a part of history like that. And they had to get helicoptered in because the traffic was so bad going into Woodstock. So they weren't the first to ever perform, but they were the first band. So they went on second.
Yeah, there were a lot of people trying to, like, be the fact police with that because they kept erroneously saying that they opened Woodstock.
Mm.
And there's all these people in the comments saying, "That's not technically correct, like, they were second to perform," and that's okay. They
W
they
Yeah,
pretty much opened, like, I mean, there really wasn't much
right.
happening before they were performing. I think it's fair to say they opened the show, so I miss this era of TV movie because they clearly took it seriously. Even the way that the costumes were done, the set
Mhm.
design, the acting, there wasn't anything lazy about it, or they really were giving it their all, and I really love this era of TV movie.
Yeah, that's well said, and I think they leaned into the drama of it because one person also complained, "Oh, it's way too dramatized." That's what a TV movie is
Mhm.
all about. You have to have this climax of something terrible happens and we have to find the resolution. Like, it's very formulaic, and I think that's what's, to your point, so comforting, and this is a very predictable movie. That's why we love it.
I really loved the era of Nancy when she was a mess. No shocker here, but she tries to launch a solo career at one point that
Mhm.
completely implodes on itself, and she finds herself passed out in her car, like, in a parking lot, getting asked for money by a guy who comes to her window telling her the police have come by twice and she probably should get out of here. And she has no money, but still decides to, like, help this guy out, which I thought was a sweet little moment. But then she's back at the liquor store the next
Mhm.
scene. The film almost seems to suggest that Janis Joplin got her started because early on in the film, Janis comes by with a little thing of vodka and hands it to her. And so I'm like, is Janis responsible for this?
Oh
I
my
think
god.
so.
That's hilarious. I That went right over my head. It's also funny how she just hopped on stage with the band, 'cause that's how the band started. They were playing, and Nancy just runs up and starts singing with them.
It was the 70s, Jillian. People did what they wanted.
Wild and crazy. Let me tell you what's also wild and crazy. This disgusting frozen meal that I ate, the Daring brand, which I've talked about before, I was getting overcharged at Erewhon. I don't know if I'm saying it right because I think the last time I talked about it, I was saying Erewhon, just to show what a low level poor person I am. So now I realize that Deering isn't super expensive, it's just getting upcharged. Anyway, I've got this at Vons. It's the buffalo mac and cheese plant chicken bowl, and I got it because I thought that was the closest to Thanksgiving I could find. The mac and cheese, little chicken.
It looks great.
It wasn't. When I microwaved it, it was so watery, almost as if it was a soup. I've never experienced that before when I did a microwave meal. It was not gooey, it was not thick. It was truly, I don't have a great understanding of measurements. I was gonna say an inch, but obviously not an inch. Maybe a few centimeters of water, I don't know. It was enough that there's no cheese in the noodles. It washed it all away.
Oh, no. That's a disaster.
Oh, it was a disaster. And then it was 2 little chicken pieces. The flavor was great, and I could see how they would market this as a Thanksgiving meal, which they did, but not as the microwave meal. They recommend making mac and cheese and then putting their chicken, their breaded chicken on top of it, buffalo, whatever you want. So that would be good, but I do not recommend this. I think there's a marketing scam too. It's at 17 grams of protein. So when you see that, you're like, oh, yeah, I could get some healthy microwave meal. And it was just a waste. So it was unfortunate. So, like Nancy's career, failure to launch.
Failure to lunch.
Yeah, right?
Well, I'm very sorry that you were left wanting more.
Yeah. So don't get it. I also want to flag something I want someone to try, maybe as a dare even. DiGiorno just released, it's a limited edition Thanksgiving pizza, which has real cheese, roasted
Limited
turkey,
edition.
limited dish, real cheese, roasted turkey, green beans, crispy onions, dried cranberries, and a gravy drizzle. I can't eat it, but you can. So let me know how it is.
You can, but you should? That's another question.
You should.
Jillian's a feeder. Make sure you send footage of you eating the pizza to Jillian.
With a gleam in my eye, you should. I'm like getting That's why I suggested this episode. I wanted Matt to eat his microwave meal in front of me.
We're actually starting a mukbang channel.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, well,
Anyway.
let's pry ourselves away from the glow of the television screen and the thaw of our frozen meals to instead bask in some radiant words of warmth. Jillian, what words are warming you this week?
Well, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I thought I have a little tongue in cheek quote, and don't be offended. But I think I think it's cozy and comforting in its own way, and I'll explain after I say it. So this is from George Burns, who says, "Happiness is having a large, loving, caring, close-knit family in another city."
But ching.
Ba-dum-dum. I think this is cozy and comforting because I think we all need to give each other license to not be one of those super close, cozy families because sometimes I like other siblings and they're just so tight. And my siblings are we're getting closer as we age, but I don't think we're ever going to be like running into each other's arms. And I'm closer and in a better place, and actually have a really good relationship. We text every day on our family chain, but they're on another coast. And I think that's possible because of that. And I like the idea of just being okay with not being like every other family. And there's something comforting and nice about that and just knowing what works for you. And maybe they don't even want me all the time. They probably feel the same way. So, in the spirit of the holidays, when we're all getting together and maybe you don't want to go to your family or you're feeling sad because you don't have a close knit family, keep this in mind.
Yeah, I love that. Everyone's situation is different. And sometimes those relationships do even better when you have a little distance and you have the space you
Hmm.
need to recharge and to feel like you can stretch your legs and still get to show love and appreciation in a way that works best for you and your loved ones.
And also, you're a celebrity when you visit. The
That
red
is
carpet's
nice.
rolled out. Yeah.
Yes, I really do kind of miss that. I see family more often now because of where we bought our house in St. Louis, and they're there, and we see them more often than we used to, and that's great, and I love that. I do miss the celebrity treatment of
Hmm.
every day is special, and we're gonna do something cool every day. I will also say it's very nice to have the mundanity too, and to have those, like, everyday moments as well, so they're both great, but
Hmm.
I agree with you. Sometimes you just wanna feel like a celeb.
Yes. And get your choice in meals, the whole package.
On the gravy train of Thanksgiving, my quote is related to that and to the royalty we experienced in Merlin. And this quote is from Aesop, apparently. I never really buy when people say things like, this quote is from Aesop's
Right.
fables. Is it? But apparently, the quote is, gratitude is the sign of noble souls. So we are all expressing gratitude this time of year. I think it's a very important thing to check in on. Remember being gracious and thankful and appreciative and helping others brings happiness to you. So it's always better to think of others when we can. And yeah, there's so much selfishness. And even in these TV movies, so much of the bad things that happens to our characters is because they don't show gratitude and they don't
Mm.
give thanks and appreciation to the people around them who make it all possible. Whether it's your bandmates or your knights of the round table, we got to show gratitude.
That's well said. It's a simple but sweet quote. And I remember when we were practicing gratitude on a regular basis for our episode on that happiness course. That seems like forever ago. I think it was a
Yeah.
few years ago. And it really did make a difference.
I still try to check in, like, in a journaly kinda way, at least once a month on who am I grateful for, and it really does help me change my frame of mind, and
Hmm.
at least for the day, I feel like I have a new lease on life. Well, let's continue the spirit of generosity by sharing another candle review.
And my candle that I got is from a really cute, is it cutely? Is that a word? I don't know. Cutely named
It is now.
company. Yeah, it's a word now. Scandals, which I think is really funny, and it's spelled like candles. And it's their heirloom tomato candle for 28 bucks, which is pricey. And description says, plucked straight from the Scandals vine, our heirloom tomato candles might be one of our favorites yet. Beautifully molded off the real thing and smelling of tomato leaves, you'd be a fool to passata up on these cuties. And I also missed the fine print that said this is a decorative candle. I was just so excited by how beautiful it is because it is a beautiful candle. They're not kidding when they said it's molded off these fresh, beautiful, big red tomatoes. They're gorgeous. They are stunning. So I was just so mesmerized by it. You can buy it as a single tomato, 3 pack, or a 6 pack. So it's beautiful to burn. I'm not getting a scent from it, even though they say it smells like a heirloom tomato. I think it truly is just a decorative one, and I should have read the fine print, but it was an happy accident because I think it's a beautiful candle to get for Thanksgiving in the theme of food. And they do have gift sets if you want to go full luxury for your Thanksgiving experience tablescape. They have a farm fresh produce candle box, which has eggs and a orange and avocado and lemon and apples. They have a ton of different shapes. That's very pricey at 250, so I'd probably skip that one. They have a garden harvest candles. They also have a fall themed candle set too, and that has pumpkins, a squash. So that could be beautiful for your tablescape. So it's nice to look at, not great if you want a scent, but I think it's a cool concept. I'm into the decorative candles thing. I didn't know that the shaped vegetables was a popular thing, but I saw them on TikTok too. So maybe that's the new craze.
When you got the candle fresh, did the wax smell, like, before you even burned it, or did it smell like wax?
I think there was a little whiff of something, but it was not something that I would even say, "Hey, buy this for any sense of scent."
Yeah, tomatoes in general aren't the most fragrant vegetable
Right,
or
that's
fruit,
that's a
technically.
good point. I didn't even think about that. You have to also put it on a plate. It seems like common sense, but I did that by accident too. I forget. It boils down. It does last a good amount of time. I don't wanna burn it too much because I wanna keep it, but it doesn't collapse in and of itself very quickly. So that's good. It's solid.
I'm obsessed. I'm looking at their website right now. They have these egg candles that you mentioned, and you can put them in, like, a poached egg holder.
Oh, cute.
And the way they have them burning and the yellow flame, like, looks like a yolk in the middle of the egg. It's supposed to have a vanilla scent, and it comes in, like, a little half a dozen egg carton. It looks so, so cute. I'm obsessed with at least the way these look, they're so attractive. I wish the scent kind of was backed up given the price range too, like,
Right.
it smelled as good as it looks, but even beyond that, you have to give it to them, you're right, like, these are gorgeous candles, they look so cool and they're doing something really special here. And the link to this candle is in our show notes if you want to check out Scandals.
Yeah, and they also have a Swiss cheese, just to add one last thing. You can put on a cheese plate. So I think if you're really into entertaining, this is your jam.
Oh my goodness. I didn't even see the cheese. Oh, you're right.
Yeah. It's cute.
Ugh, they have so many other ones too. Oh, definitely a brand to check out. This is one that I'm going to keep my eye on because it's a very special brand, even if it's a
Yes.
bit pricey.
Yes.
That is all for today. We hope you all have a wonderful season of giving and gratitude as we roll into our holiday season and into the month of December. We are grateful for you, listeners. Thank you for supporting our show. Whether you are on our Patreon supporting us, where you can join our book club, you can get stickers and magnets, a mug if you're at our pillar level. Check that out. It's at patreon.com/all things cozy. And shout out to two of our new patrons.
Oh, yes. Thank you to Sarah and Carrie for joining our Patreon. I have these really cute stamps. I hope you enjoy them. They are cats and dogs holding little hearts, and I really enjoy sending out these gifts. And our little cozy swag includes a sticker and a magnet. I hope you really enjoy it. It brings me joy to send out these cards and our handwritten notes, sending love from us, and we really appreciate the support.
Absolutely. And you can also support our show by following us and checking out our posts on Instagram and Facebook. We're at All Things Cozy Podcast. And last but not least, if you do like the show and want to let other people know about it, you can leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. And we particularly tend to read the ones that are left on Apple Podcasts if you listen via that app. We'll read those on the show if they're a 5-star review. And we just love to get reviews. It makes our day and it helps
Yes.
people find the show. So we hope you all have a wonderful end of fall, really, as we slide into winter here, slipping and sliding on the ice, but it's getting cozier and cozier as we go along the season. Until next time, stay
Stay
cozy.
cozy.